Okay. So no, Max, we don't need UI because I specifically...
You don't want that.
I specifically wrote the first version of this to use slash commands because I want to test the system first and see if we like it as a foundation and then build UI. Otherwise, if we build the UI first and then we decide we hate the underlying system, it's a huge waste of time. So, okay, so... Okay, so I broke it into, I started by breaking into two parts, right? So I've got city building, multiplayer city building, and multiplayer world building, right? Those are kind of two separate, similar and connected, but separate vectors we have to go down. And then each of those, there turned out to be so much work there that I broke them into phase 1 and phase 2. And then I went back and looked at phase 1 and decided it was still too heavy, so I made a phase 1.5. I probably should have made it 1, 2, and 3, but I didn't. So anyway, so there's like 6 parts. There's city building 1, 1.5, and 2, world building 1, 1.5, and 2. And I put them in priority order, and I kind of leapfrog between the two. So it goes city building 1, world building 1, city building 1.5, world building 1.5, city building 2, world building 2. Does that make sense? Sort of. Not really. But anyway, all right. All you have to do is start at the beginning and make the stuff in order, and the phases numbers don't make any difference, right? Sure. So, okay. So I went through first, I just put down the basic definitions of stuff that's already in and working, like here's the world grid, here's the world grid, here's what a parcel is, the world owner, who's called a monarch, the fact that we have overall global restrictions, right? So you can set your world public or private. If you say public, it means anybody can come in unless they're on the banned list. If you set it private, it means the only people who can come in are the people on the allowed players list. That all works already, so I'm building on that as a base. I defined a term of a noble as being a person who has been given world building access on this world. So if I have a kingdom and I want you to be able to drop parcels on it, I call that the nobles list. So it means you're a member of you're already an allowed player. And on top of that, you've been given noble access, which means you can add and drop parcels. And then I did the same thing at the city building level with vassals, which is if you're a noble and you drop a parcel, you're that parcel owner. And then you have a vassals list, which is people who are allowed to drop buildings on there, right? You with me so far? Yeah. So, okay, so let's just to go through it. So everybody's got it. So I got the world has a monarch. Actually, we'll put the monarch up here.
So the monarch we can think of as the admin, right?
They're the world owner. They're the ultimate root level world owner, right? So that's the world has the monarch. Underneath that, then, you've got a list of allowed players. And that's just people who can log in. Inside that, you have an admin right, which is a noble. And then of those nobles, they can drop a parcel, and they are the parcel owner. And underneath that, you can have a list of vassals who are already on the allowed players list. It's really not that bad. It seems kind of bad, but when you go through it, it's pretty standard stuff. Like it's the same type of thing you'd see in an operating system like Unix. I have a bunch of users, and some of them have admins.
So are you thinking maybe like the amount of nobles is like the token limit?
No,
4 or 5?
Eventually we'll probably have a limit. So I put that stuff into 1.5, the second phase, which is to put weight limits on. So for example, if I make you a noble, I can say, and I'm only giving you access to be able to drop up to 20 cells, a cell being one of these grid squares. I'm only letting you drop up to 20 cells worth of parcels. And then I let Bentley in, and he's going to be a noble, but I don't trust him as much because, I mean, who would, right? And I'm only going to give him like 5 cells.
And those are marked off, and I can't touch them, and he can't touch.
Not right now. So phase 1 is just if I make you a noble, you have full control over the world. I can still kick you out, and I can move your stuff around, and you can only move your own stuff around, but you can place it anywhere. There's no restriction on placement, and initially there's no restriction on how much, so quantity or location.
But once I've placed it, Tommy, the horrible noble, he can't come in and
he can't change it. I can move your stuff. You can move your stuff. I can pick up your stuff. You can pick up your stuff. He can't, and vice versa, right? So version 1.5 then is when I added the capacity limits. So it's you can put on 20 and he can put on 5. And then phase 2 was adding regions where I can define an area as the north and say, John, you can only use your 20 cells within this region. And Tommy, you can only use your 5 cells down here in the south. right? So eventually we get there, but I tried to build it as layers of the onion.
It's funny how you circled back around to some of the original ideas and thoughts that we had even during Kickstarter.
Yeah, effectively, I've tried to simplify it down to the essence, and I've tried to stage it out in complexity so that we're building towards it, because we have players playing right now, right?
Yeah.
So the next version that comes out, they're going to have vendors that they can drop in their own kingdoms, but there's no multiplayer ability. So it's going to kind of be the whole loop. Like, I can go into a campaign world and I get resources and I can take them to you and you can craft them. You can put stuff in your vendor and then Tommy can come to your world and buy it. That'll work. But if you actually think through it as a player, it means that every player will have their own kingdom with their own shop and their own vendor to log into. That's not a very good shopping experience, right? It's not like, it's worse than, it's not a mall. It's worse than even like a farmer's market. Like, it's literally having to go from one farm to the next to buy, to look and shop for everything. So that's kind of crappy. So that's why I put city building 1 as the first thing on the list. So let's start with that one, actually. So so I also did a thing here about taxes. I mentioned taxes. Vendors has sales tax built. The vendor system that's about to come online does have a sales tax system in it, but initially the only tax that's supported is system tax, which is the basically the overall charge that the system takes. So having a parcel owner tax and then a kingdom owner tax, we're laying the foundation for it, but those come online in later phases too.
Is that automatic?
The system tax is automatic. So there's and I don't remember what it's set to, but it's like, 7% or something like that of any transaction. There's a tax that's just taken out by the system. On top of that, the parcel owner will be able to have a knob where they can say, I want from 0 to 100% of additional tax. And then the kingdom owner can say, and I want an additional 0 to 100% on top of that as well. So that'll be something that is negotiated between the players. Like, I can, if I'm the parcel owner and I want you to come bring your shop here, I can say, I'm going to offer you a break. I'll make it only 5%. Or whatever.
So that's a really cool idea.
I think it is cool. So longer term, we're going to want to give them more granularity so that I can say, on Tommy's shop, it's 10%, but on your shop, it's 5%.
Of course.
Right, because that's what I would do. But that's an eventual thing. Initially, we're going to start with just the system, and then we'll add in the overall simple knob, and then we'll get granular later. Make sense?
Oh, yeah.
This
is very cool.
City building 1 then. So parcel owner can grant any player that's on the allowed player list the rights to build. That makes them a noble. I came up with just a series of simple / commands to use to manage that list right now. It's the stuff you would expect. View the list, add to the list, remove from the list. I put in here that we need a new mode of building manipulation, which is moving a building. So right now, I drop a building in the parcel, and in order to do that, I use a deed. It shows up ghost form, then I can drag it around, and as long as it turns blue, which was broken, but that's fixed now, we think.
In which situation?
In the last version, remember, it was really like it would take you 2 hours to find a spot. That's fixed. Okay, great. So I could drop it and I could drag it around. When I was done, I would say go here. So in order to keep the inventory from exploding into this giant, unbelievable tree, we don't let you redeed that building if you have vendors or containers that have stuff on them. All right.
So you'd have to clear all that out first.
So here was the problem, is it created an unbelievable tree. Like, let's say I put a vendor there, and the vendor has a list of items that he stores, and in that list of items is a building with a vendor with a list of items. And in that vendor, he's got a building. So it became a giant, ridiculous problem very quickly. It's a nightmare. And so it also became a free infinite container. I don't know, why would I need a bank? I just stick everything on my vendor. So we've had to go around, we've had to fix those problems. And one of the fixes is any containers, including vendors and chests that are in this thing, if you want to pick this thing up and redeed it, you have to empty those out first. Your vendor can stay there, your furniture can stay there, but you have to empty the containers out.
Are we thinking that's going to be in some sort of UI, so once you pick it up, it gives you an option to say clear out, or do you have to go in there on the
eventually we can make it cleaner, but right now, if you want to pick up this building and redeed it to move it to another world, you have to clean it out.
Okay.
You don't have to clean all the furniture. You only have to clean out.
physically go down there and remove it
You have to, you go up to it. It's glute is what it's called right now, G to loot. We probably need to fix that text at some point to say like, G to redeed this object or whatever. But so I've got this object in the world.
That makes sense.
If I want to pick it up and redeed it, then I have to clear it out. Mm-hmm. But if I'm the parcel owner and I let you build a building right here, and I decided that I want Tommy, I'm running out of props. I want him to build his building right here. I need you to move your building. You're not even online right now. I can't be stuck. So I need to be able to move that building. But now we've got a problem. If I'm the parcel owner, I don't want to have to clear out all of the items in your containers and your vendors,
especially
in order to just move this thing 2 feet.
And you told me to move 10 minutes ago, and I just set it up, and now I got to log off.
Right, exactly. So that caused a bunch of problems. So our way to fix that is we need to add a movement mode for buildings and assets.
Makes sense.
So that instead of actually redeeding it and picking it up, I can just grab it, it'll go back into ghost form, and I can slide it around without picking it up. And for that, we don't need to clear anything out. Just for nudging.
Yeah.
Right? It's for nudging. In fact, we even talked about making the avatar run up to it and using their shake the tree animation to actually just shove the building and sliding it over. But we, as funny as that was, we thought it'd be too painful.
What I really like about this idea, which I think is going to be really great, is this is going to make actual city building much more easy.
Yeah, I think it'll be a lot easier.
Making those kind of tight little buildings that kind of connect to each other that they're going to want to make to get that kind of old city feeling. Right. This is going to be way easier.
I know. It just wasn't. Without this, it wasn't really workable. So that's why I put this in phase 1. Even though technically they could have gotten away with building cities without it, I think it would have been such a painful experience that it
way more arduous and just unnecessarily kind of. And this is going to get painful. This is going to get closer to how I would be doing it. If I'm creating a scene,
when you build them,
I'm just dragging him around and just rotating him and get him to look all nice and pretty. They're gonna, if they can have that kind of same ability, that's going to be fantastic.
Right. So how hard? I guess that's my next question. Is that painful?
I'm not saying no. It's going to take a little bit of time because we no longer store the socket connections in a tree structure. It's basically just flat lists.
Nothing you said makes any sense to me, but it sounds...
we would need to change the way that we stored the connections between buildings.
Okay.
So yes.
So that is going to make it more challenging because you have to go... Is it basically, are you going to go back and make it to where you continue to store those? Or you're going to try and rebuild them? Because this is for other things that you've added to the building, right? Like crafting tables and... you added a flagpole out front and...
Well, this is the same problem we just hit as he was creating the vendor. So it's attachables attaching to attachables, right?
That was the issue, yeah.
Right.
Well, because, when you socket to a building, it adds to a list.
Okay.
Or one of 2 lists. And there's a list for all the attachables that this building is attached to.
Okay.
And there's a list of all other buildings that this building is attached to.
Right. The standalone buildings, like 2 wall segments.
Sure.
Because technically the difference is an attachable can't exist in the world unless it's attached to a building, whereas those connected buildings can.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
Right. And so I guess, part of the question is when you're picking up a building, how far out do you want to pick up? Like, do you want to unsocket it from everything except attachables?
Yes, attachables should stay connected, but connected buildings should not. Just as if you had redeeded it, you had dropped it from a deed. Because if you deed it, if you redeed it, you put it back into your inventory, it keeps the attachables, right? But it disconnects from other connected objects.
But if you had a wall segment socketed to another wall segment and you did the move on one of them, it wouldn't move both.
No, it shouldn't move both of them because that would be fairly horrendous. And really actually hard to manage. It sounds convenient, but if you have a full citadel and you're moving one piece and it causes like a ripple effect, you'll never be able to find a way to place it again.
Especially if that one of the assets in the distance is not even loaded.
Right, because it could be connected to something that on the server that is not even on your client.
Yeah, so...
If you made the Great Wall of China, for example.
Yeah, so the fact that you'd only be picking up the attachables and the decorations when you move it makes it a little bit simpler, but we're still going to need to rework a little bit how the socket connections are stored.
Okay.
Otherwise, so like the issue that Max had brought up was with vendors, we put an annex on the ground, and then we had the stall, which was an attachable, and we attached that.
Okay.
Then we had the vendor, which was an attachable. And that vendor would attach to the stall. So it's now an attachable attached to an attachable.
Right, of course.
Which we never had before.
Okay.
So this was technically a bug in the past, but we never knew it. So when you...
Because we never tried that code path.
Right. So, okay, for example, when you hover over a building that you've placed, it highlights, right? So that you can interact with it. And so right now what it does is it says, all of my attachable, like, do my highlight, then tell all of my attachables to do their highlight, which then tells all of their attachables to do their highlight.
Yeah.
And if you have an attachable connected to an attachable, you now have a circle. Because the vendor is being told to highlight, and in his attachables list is the stall. And so the stall is getting told to highlight.
So so an attachable has a link back to its parent, is what you're saying.
And any building has a list of what it's connected to.
Right, but it's not just a list of the things that are down. It's a two-way connection. So I put the building, I add the stall, I put the vendor, here's my vendor. Now, here's building, attachable, vendor, right? So the vendor says to the stall, hey, you're connected to me, so you need to highlight, so these guys are stuck in a trap. It needs to just go down the chain. This thing tells its children, and this thing tells its children, and it's done. Right. Okay, so I get that. So there's some work there. Okay, so in terms of, based on what we just said, though, they don't have to have the move building. They can get around it. It's just really, really obnoxious. So what I would do is I'll reorder this list. It's still going to be part of phase 1. I don't want to go out without it. But to get us up and running more quickly, I would suggest we do the vassal list management stuff first, because then we can actually get in and start to test that and see, are there other issues? Like, I decide I want to move this building, but I don't know that John, who's a noble, and this is his, I'm the world owner or the parcel owner. He's a building owner, let's say. If I'm in the middle of moving his building and he logs in and now he's trying to move it, there could be locking issues, right? So I sent a note about this one, not just to you, but to Stephen as well, asking, like, do we need to lock that asset so that if he tries to use it, it says, sorry, Todd's already moving it, you can't,
that would
or
be
whatever.
Nice.
So there'll be some weird oddities like that come out, but I guess that won't come up until we add the moving anyway. So,
I mean, how else would we do that?
So the thing is, the movement, as far as I know, so tell me if I'm wrong, but the movement of a building is not actually happening on the server. On the client, I'm saying, hey, I want to move this building. And the client's like, okay, tell me where you want it. And when you're done figuring out where to put it, I'll let the server know you moved it. So that means that I'm in ghost mode, let's say, and I'm dragging this thing around. Server doesn't care. The server doesn't know that I'm even doing that until I submit it. So if in the meantime, I start that process, you walk up and grab that building, and now you move it around, and then you say, actually put it here, what the hell happens? Is it going to tell me? Yeah, is it going to send a message to me saying, well, it's certainly going to send a message to me saying this building's been moved. So when I get that message, we could do one of two things. We could cancel my movement and say, hey, I'm aborting you just so you know because John moved this building out from under you. Or it could get it and say, yeah, John moved it, whatever, doesn't matter. I'm in the middle of moving it. And when I finally decide where to put it, it'll send my message up and the server will then pop it and you'll just see it. Teleport, right? So I don't know which of those I prefer. As long as whichever one we go with doesn't break things, I don't really care. Like what we don't want is the two clients are out of sync now, or the building gets duped, God forbid, or anything like that. Or it blows away the vendors. Like we just want it to not be buggy. Otherwise, I don't really care which of those, to be honest. So